The Chicago Cubs seem to have real interest in Alex Bregman. Do they need him?
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We are your team every day. I'm Sam Olber. I'm a lifelong fan taking my passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. A jam-packed episode for you on this Wednesday morning. Some updates about some big free agent moves across the league. Craig Counsell spoke for the first time at the winter meetings and really gave a lot of interesting information that we're going to talk about and share. But we start today's show with, I think, the biggest news of Tuesday, and that is the continued interest of the Cubs in free agent third baseman Alex Bregman. MLB insider Robert Murray reported that a couple of weeks ago the Cubs and Bregman had a Zoom meeting. He had a Zoom meeting with a couple other teams. Sahadev Sharma, as Matt was talking about, Sahadev from The Athletic, was talking about on a Foul Territory, I think it was a video or a pod, about how the Cubs do have real interest towards Bregman. I'm paraphrasing here. It would take some dominoes to fall, i.e. the Red Sox going to get another infielder like a Ketel Marte type that they have showed interest in, which would then bring the Bregman market essentially down to the Cubs and Tigers, where the Cubs have a pretty good chance. That was discussed as well. So obviously some smoke there regarding Alex Bregman and his free agency. The question is do the Cubs need Alex Bregman? How much better does he make you, considering you'll probably have to pay him somewhere between $26 and $30 million a year? And, if you guys have watched me a lot this offseason, I'm all for it, right? I want to add bats. I think this team needs more bats. I'm not sure that this is a difference-making bat in the sense that replacing Kyle Tucker, speaking on replacing Kyle Tucker, but it's still a better bat. And, we're going to talk about Counsell in the second segment, but, he made this point, and it's relative to now, is that the Cubs were really healthy last year around the infield, at third, short, second, and first. You don't know that they're going to be that healthy. You can't just plug and play and go, well, it's going to be Shaw. We're all good there. It's going to be Dansby. It's going to be Nico. It's going to be Bush. You have to have some more depth. And, their depth towards the end of the year wasn't great. And so if you do get a guy like Alex Bregman, Matt Shaw could still play some games at second base. He could still play some games, I'm sure, at shortstop. He could still play some games at third base. Bregman only played, I believe, the 114 games last season anyway. He's a little bit older. You're going to want to spell him, keep him fresh, keep him rested for the long haul. And of course, the other side of it is that the Cubs only have, Dansby in the infield and Bush, under control through 2026 or after 26. So, you don't know what's going to happen with Horner and Happ and, Suzuki. And so, having another guy in the fold might be important. And, I think that's all the reasons to get him. And the other part of getting him that's interesting is I wonder if it is all related to the pitching market as well. What if the Cubs are starting to look at the pitching market free agent wise and go, nah, we don't like the prices here. We don't think we're getting great value there, but we actually think we're getting really good value for Bregman. And then that could open up a trade for a pitcher that, potentially Matt Shaw could be around for. Like if I were to tell you the Cubs get Alex Bregman, and then they trade Matt Shaw, but in return for that is Mackenzie Gore or Edward Cabrera, is that something you'd be interested in? I don't know. I personally would like to see them just go get Bregman in free agency, go get Amai in free agency, and then, figure out the rest later. And if they really want to go all in after that or at the trade deadline, then we could discuss trading away some of your young pieces. But I think a lot of this, it makes sense. I think there is an element that's a little bit frustrating, and that's just more because I just wish they got him last year, because I think if they got him last year, that probably would have put them over the top just in terms of winning the division and maybe beating Milwaukee. Not to say Matt Shaw wasn't a really good piece last year in the second half, but the offense, at third base for a lot of the season really struggled. And so, you can't go back. You could only go forward. Bregman is, a he's not a guy that you get and replace Kyle Tucker's production with. That's not what the purpose of this is. This would be more of, hey, we need more good hitters, we need more infielders, and he qualifies for that. And last season, like I said, he played about 114 games. He hit 18 homers in 114 games, which is a pretty good number. He OPS'd 821. He had 3.5. I got a baseball reference up here, so B-WAR. He's not the defender that Matt Shaw is now, but he's still competent over there. And, I think it would just give the Cubs more flexibility. And as we've talked about a lot on this show, I think you could do two things. I think you can roll out the red carpet for the young guys, but also take some pressure off of them. And I think just adding Alex Bregman takes some pressure off of them, right? If Moises Ballesteros is struggling for a while at DH, okay, great. Bregman moves over to DH, Shaw slots in the third. You have more options. You have more flexibility. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that this is the greatest addition. It's like getting Tucker last year. It changes everything. No, but it definitely makes the Cubs a deeper baseball team. It definitely raises their floor, in my opinion, because now you have another veteran in the room, another, a baseball champion in the room, and, a guy that could help you win baseball games. So I'm interested in it. If you want my final take on it, I would not be devastated if the Cubs don't do this, but I also wouldn't be upset if they do. I really am kind of indifferent on this. I understand why they're doing it. And my biggest question is, when I say why they're doing it, why they're interested in it, my biggest question for them is it all related to the pitching market, or is it totally independent of that? Because that's what I'm fascinated on. I would love to see the Cubs go out and get Bregman and one of the free agent pitchers without having to do a big trade in there. Because, the goal is to win baseball games. And in this case, because of the way the Cubs are put together, develop young talent at the same time. And how fun would it be to have a team where you have your Bregman, you have your Dansby, you have your Nico, you have your Ian, and then you also have your Pete, your Shaw, your Bush, your Ballesteros, your Casey. It's a real mix of veteran and young talent. And I just think they need one more solid veteran like a Bregman in order to be able to roll out the red carpet for those young guys, but not with too much pressure. Right? We have another guy here if you need that. Now, you could come back and say, well, that you don't want to pay $30 million a year for a guy to just take off pressure off the young guys, and that's fair. But it's not my money, and I want the Cubs to spend, as you guys know. So I'm intrigued by this rumor. We'll see what happens with it. It seems very similar to last year, Boston, Detroit, and the Cubs, and it all depends on what Boston does with the position player, particularly the infield market. They showed some interest. It was reported today in trading for Ketel Marte. If they do that, I think Bregman then becomes a Cub or a Tiger. If they don't and they just re-sign Bregman, well, then obviously we know how that goes. So it'll be really interesting. I think the biggest point, the biggest takeaway from the Bregman situation is that don't overestimate or take for granted the Cubs were really, really healthy last year. That doesn't happen a lot. It's a great point by Counsell, and you have to kind of plan for that not happening because of, just how baseball and sports work. So it'll be really exciting to see what happens with that. I talked about how Craig Counsell spoke. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that he said, some really interesting answers and questions today at the winter meetings. We talk about that coming up next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. I just got finished. It's about 9 o'clock Central Time Tuesday night. Just got finished watching my Fight in the Line. I beat the Buckeyes in Columbus. Obviously, we're talking about basketball here. They closed as only 2.5-point favorites on FanDuel. Got a really nice road win, and they'll host Fred Hoiberg's Nebraska Cornhuskers, who are off to a really good start in Champaign on Saturday. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. Thank you for making Locked On Cubs your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Cubs with no interruptions, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedoncubs.supercast.com or check the link in this episode description. The Everydayer Club. Awesome new situation coming from the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys are too. I'm really excited about what Craig Counsell had to say at the winter meetings, because it was, revealing, if you will. I got a lot of news on it. I think the biggest thing was that finally somebody in the Cubs front office or manager was asked about Justin Steele, and the answer was interesting. Counsell said not opening day for Justin, but at some point in the first half of the season. And then on a different interview on the MLB Network with Cliff Floyd, he actually said they expect to have him for the bulk of the season, just not opening day. So I think when I first heard not opening day, but some point in the first half, that was a little bit, I was thrown off by that, because I thought, in my head, I mean, we had Steele on the show. He didn't give us a timeline. He just told us that when he does come back, he'll be on some sort of pitch count. I just kind of assumed, for whatever reason, mid-May, something around there. And then when I heard Counsell say, at some point in the first half, that speaks to more June-ish, late June-ish. But then he said bulk of the season. So I'm still putting my timeline around mid to late May with this situation, but who knows? I think the goal with Steele is to just have him at his absolute best really come the second half, August, September stretch run of the season. And until then, spell Imanaga, spell Tyone when you need to, spell whoever they're going to get here in free agency or in trade, and run a 6-man rotation if you have to just keep everybody as fresh as possible, because, the postseason taught us last year that, guys could fade quickly. Now you got to get to the postseason. You got to plan for 162. Counsell also talked about that. You don't plan for the postseason before the regular season starts. The Cubs don't have the luxury of doing that. But I do think just keeping their starters fresh will help them win games in the regular season and in the postseason. Speaking of Imanaga, Counsell talked about how excited he was about Shota. He thinks that there are some things that they figured out. And he's really excited to see the way that Shota responds. I'm the same way. I think I spoiled this on a show maybe a couple of weeks ago. One of my bold predictions, I'll tell you right now, will be about Shota being the best guy on this team, starter wise. I think he's a really competitive guy. I think it ended really poorly for him last year. It was probably a little bit embarrassing for him. I don't think that's too strong of a term, not in terms of his performance, but it was Game 5. It was win or go home. It was the biggest game the Cubs have played since 2017. It was his time to pitch, and he didn't pitch. And no matter who you are, that's going to stick with you in the offseason. That's going to motivate you. And I think you're going to get Shota making adjustments. I think he's going to be good next year. I really do. I really do. I think we'll look back at that whole $22 million things and say, you know what? He pitched like a $22 million pitcher. Biggest takeaway from Counsell's press conference. Michael Busch has earned more opportunities versus lefties. He said they owe that to Busch, and I agree. And I think that really takes the Cubs. Sure, they need a righty bench bat just in case, but it doesn't have to be somebody like Matt was talking about. It doesn't have to be a Goldschmidt type of guy, because if you go get Goldschmidt, he's got to play first base every time there's a lefty out there. I don't think the Cubs are going to need that. I believe that Michael Busch has earned a runway for at least a couple of months to start every day versus righties versus lefties. Let's see if we have a real star level player here in Michael Busch, because he hit like a star last year, but he hit like a star versus righties. Now let's see what he does every single day. He's earned that right. Early in the year, give it until Memorial Day. If he's hitting like 090, 130, 140 against lefties, then you got to make the adjustment. But he's earned the runway to play every single day versus righties and lefties. I'm glad. Now, Counsell didn't say every day, to be fair, but he said more opportunities. I'm the one saying, let's just run him out there for a month or two every day and see what happens. He was another one, Counsell, like Hoyer, talking about how important Shaw was going to be in 26. But he said, he goes, you could add depth. We were really healthy last year. You could add depth. This guy can play multiple positions, like what we talked about in the first segment. So I thought that was interesting. And then he emphasized that the Cubs have a lot of work to do in the bullpen, which we all know. We all know they're probably, if I had to guess, they're probably 3 minimum, probably 4 like actual transactions, free agent acquisitions, trades, whatever, until the bullpen even looks close to complete. I mean, right now there's Maton, there's Palencia, and then there's just a whole lot of what ifs. The Brad Keller situation, I would love to bring him back, but if there's going to be another team that offers him the opportunity to start, they're going to offer him more money, and the Cubs aren't going to be able to compete with 3 years, $30 million for Brad Keller in a closer role, maybe 2 years, 20, but not 3 years, 30. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, I thought Counsell, he looked refreshed. He had great energy, good sense of humor. He looked like he was in a really good place. And, it was a good year, I thought, for Craig Counsell for the most part. I think the only thing that really hurts him is that everything that the Cubs came up short with happened to be against his former team. And, for me, that would hurt my ego a little bit. I don't think Craig Counsell is bothered by that. He just wants to win baseball games. And, the Cubs have an interesting situation on how to win as many games as they can when, DH is going to be Ballesteros, and even Craig talked about Ballesteros and said that, it's trending towards him basically, being with the major leagues, but he did acknowledge, other transactions could determine that. Ballesteros is going to lock up DH. It looks like, shorts locked up, seconds locked up, first is locked up, left, center, right. It's hard. It's hard to improve a team no matter how much you want the team to spend. It's hard to do that. And then you add in the fact that a lot of those guys aren't under contract for 27. It creates a lot of uncertainty around the team, which is great for media and podcasting, but not so great if you're in it and wondering, well, what's going to happen? Are the Cubs going to extend Nico Hoerner at some point this offseason to at least create a little less uncertainty? I don't want to go into a trade deadline if the Cubs are 3-4 games back, having to do a show going, well, with all these guys up for contract at the end of the year, would the Cubs trade any of them? I mean, I dread that show. So there's a lot going on, but it seemed like Counsell was in a really good place, really confident in the team, confident in the direction, and that's a good sign. There were finally some big moves today at the winter meetings, not Cubs related, but the Cubs weren't far off, especially with a guy by the name of Kyle Schwarber. We talk about those and talk about kind of where the Cubs are at here heading into Wednesday. We'll do all that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game. Like the game I'll be picking will be Argentina versus, I think, either it's Austria or I forget who the other team is, but they're playing in Kansas City. And I'm going to try and go. And you tap a section. They have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. And don't forget, Thursday, December 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. live on YouTube. Come join Matt and myself for our annual holiday party. Matt does a magnificent job with that. Email him. Get yourself in for that show. We have a great time. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. I can't wait for it. Some big news today. Kyle Schwarber, once rumored to go to the Reds, ended up going back to the Philadelphia Phillies. No surprises there. 5 years, $150 million. Edwin Diaz, shocker here, went to the Los Angeles Dodgers on a, I believe it was a 3-year, $69 million deal for Diaz. No surprises there. Just got the market going a little bit. I think for the Cubs, it was just nice that Schwarber didn't end up on the Reds. I think I learned the hard way a couple of weeks ago to stop talking about Schwarber. It wasn't going to happen, and yet I continued to talk about it because I wanted it to happen. Cubs were obviously never involved in their former legendary DH and an outfielder, and because of the Ballesteros situation, because of the young players, you could understand why, but I selfishly wanted it to happen. As far as Edwin Diaz going to the Dodgers needed a closer, so they went out and they got the best closer and paid the most money. That's how it goes. I'm never going to ask the Cubs to be the Dodgers, and I think that's what I want to wrap the show with today. Is I feel like I don't want to say been negative in terms of the offseason, or not as excited, right? I haven't been as excited as I typically am about off seasons because I understand what the Cubs are doing, right? We've talked about it. We talked about it on the Spaces last night. Cap talked about it when he was on here. They're trying to build 87, 88 win teams on paper. They're trying to outperform expectations, get themselves to 91, 92 wins. If they underperform expectations, now you're looking at 84, 85, 83 wins. We've seen both combinations of that. So when I see what they're doing, it's not that I'm not excited about the offseason or anything like that. It's just you have a job to do when you get a player. And Matt and I think one of the reasons why Matt and I have such good chemistry is we're very different thinkers. We feed off each other. He's more of an in the moment, in the now type of thinker where, hey, the Cubs got Zach Gallen. Okay, I'm going to try and talk myself into Zach Gallen. And I'm more of a, all right, the Cubs got Zach Gallen. Before I do that, I want to emphasize 5 times that he was the cheaper option and they're going a different route. They're being cheap, et cetera, et cetera. And there's really no winning way to do it because there's a contingent of people that are going to say, Sam, I want you to make sure you let everyone know that that's the cheap route and that they could do better. And then there's going to be the contingent of people that say, we don't care if it's the cheap route. We just want the Cubs to get better. Tell us and teach us about the player we got, right? And you try and land somewhere in the middle. And I think I've made my point about the direction of the team ever since they made it public. We're going all in on pitching, yada, yada. I knew, I know how the offseason's probably going to unfold of some sort, although it's been a little bit more positive lately. But the Matthew Boyd contract is the best example of where you want to be, where I'd like to be. I was excited about that move from a baseball perspective, but also had the ability to know that it was also, a cheaper move on the, rotation side, considering who was available. And as I always say on these solo shows, right, every time, 2 things could be true. You could be excited about the baseball acquisition and think, hey, this guy's going to be really good. But you could also say, man, I just wish they acted with more big market muscles. But I think I could sense myself getting tired of talking about that. And so I'm going to try and lock in a little bit more here towards the baseball side because I think that's probably what most of you want. But, it's important every now and then and to acknowledge that these teams are not being run by teams. They're being run like businesses. They're being run like businesses. And when you have the playoffs that the Cubs had, where I thought Wrigley was by far the best ballpark, best atmosphere to play in. You have these fans, you have this loyalty, you have this brand. You just wish that they could extend themselves for some players a little bit more. But that I need to do a better job of making that not take away the joy of getting a new player. Because even if they do get a Zach Gallen, there's tons of good things that come with that. And when I saw the Reds miss out on Schwarber, and basically the Reds people I was following were like, yeah, they only were going after Schwarber to sell tickets, so they're not going to take that 120, 130 that they had and offer it elsewhere. It does remind you that it could be worse. Now that's not defending Tom, because like I said, there's a contingent of people who are like, is Sam now defending Tom? No, but you do what you can, right? You do what you can. If you got a bad back injury, you're not going to wake up every single day and it's my back. I can't do this. I can't do this. No, you're still going to try and enjoy activities and do what you can and know that, the back is limiting you a little bit, right? It's the same with our owner. I'm going to still enjoy this team. I'm going to still analyze and get excited when I think they make moves to help them win baseball games in 2026 and beyond. But I'm also going to acknowledge that they are being limited at the same time. And I think in this position, on this stage, it's my responsibility to do both. It's Matt's responsibility to do both. I think we both do that. We do it in different ways, which makes it exciting. And, if it does ever feel like, oh, Sam's just never, going to just talk about a play or whatever, then I apologize for that, because it's important for you guys to, feel the excitement from me when good things happen. Now, the Cubs haven't really done much yet, but when they do, if I like the move from a baseball side, I promise I will be excited about it, because at the end of the day, this is entertainment. This is really fun stuff, and I just want to win baseball games. If the Cubs payroll ends up at 230 million instead of 245, but they're a game, down 3-2 against the Dodgers in the NLCS, I'm still going to be pretty pumped for Game 6, and so are you. So hopefully they could just turn it into as many wins as possible and go forward. I'm interested to see what Wednesday brings. Last day, my gut is, probably some more rumors, maybe some stuff. Jed's always talked about starting conversations at the winter meetings and then finishing them later. The big question to look out for with the Cubs, what happens with the Red Sox and Bregman? And then do the Cubs explore the free agency market for a starting pitcher or the trade market? Because if they do jump and get a trade going, then I think it all but guarantees that they're going to go big for a position player too, because I don't think they need to trade for a big time starting pitcher and get a free agent starting pitcher if they're expecting Steele to pitch a bulk of the season. That's, they'd be like 7 or 8 guys. I mean, that'd be a lot. I mean, I'm all for it, but that would be surprising. So we'll see what happens. Not a whole lot going on, but it was definitely a more active Tuesday than Monday. So hopefully Wednesday brings some Cubs news. Thank you for making Locked On Cubs your first listen of the day. For those of you on video, we send you to the 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On MLB. Have a great day, everybody.